But I mean, like, look, what everybody's talking about on social media is Kwame Brown, who's former number one overall pick, played a decade in the NBA, clearly bothered by some of the comments of other former NBA players and the Stephen A's of the world calling him out, even though his career's been over for a long time. Here's Kwame Brown and one of his many viral rants this week.
I think you guys need to focus and channel that energy on some more real problems, like the way we are as black males and the way that we look. And Steven Jackson, maybe you could put that blunt out and pull your pants up on your and put that rag down and act like a grown man instead of a little boy. Becky with the good hair, go to counseling. And Gilbert, you already knew. I was quiet on you for years. I wasn't going to say nothing. You the right-hand arm of them white boys. What did I get? 3 years, 25 with the Lakers? I was slotted to get 80, 88 because what a Tyson got. You took millions out my mouth and you shout like you somebody, like you love black folks. You the whitest black boy I ever know. So y'all me with all that. Whichever one of these white folks paying you come at me, this here one, you better go find you something better to do.
It's a lot longer than that, a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that. Okay. But let's also kind of catch our breath and take a look at things and understand. Okay. So look, I think calling a guy who's the former number one overall pick who played a decade in the NBA a scrub, right? There's a viral video of, and I just, some of the things that Stephen A has said, some of the things that Skip Bayless has said, by my estimation, they're unacceptable. You know, because it's like Skip, of course, remember he did the Jim Rome she thing with Chris Bosh, right? Which I understand, right? Like it could come across as a misogynist comment nowadays and how we look at it. It wasn't that long ago but you're calling somebody a girl who plays like a girl. There's a negative connotation to that, and you don't do that anymore. And I get it. But we all knew what he meant, right? We all knew what he meant. And it's like, that's who we are as on sports television. On the other hand, here's where I will defend criticisms of Kwame Brown as a number one overall pick. I mean, I don't think you can say anything other than, was he a bust? Was he a bust? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, by anybody's standards, okay, should you have respect for his time spent in the NBA? Of course. Why wouldn't you? He was in the 2001 NBA draft. Tyson Chandler, who just retired, behind him. Pau Gasol, who's now playing in Spain, behind him. Eddie Curry, obviously his career cut short. Jason Richardson, long career. Shane Battier, long career. Eddie Griffin, short career. Desanya Diop, short career. Rodney White, fairly short career. Joe Johnson, long career, trying to get back in the NBA. That draft was so hit or miss. Richard Jefferson, of course, on television, talking about basketball. Brilliant guy, played a long time. Brendan Hayward, brilliant guy, played in the NBA a long time. He was the 20th pick of the first round of that draft. Tony Parker was 28. Tony Parker obviously was an incredible NBA player. Gilbert Arenas had incredible talent, had some unbelievable seasons. I don't know, he didn't necessarily didn't live up to some of the hype, although as a second-round pick, exceeded anybody's reasonable expectations. So here's the way I look at it. Look, I wouldn't call. I think there's the name-calling stuff, that does you no good. But if you want to say, like, look, as a number one overall pick, to have the career he had was incredibly disappointing, and maybe it's a warning sign to drafting a guy straight out of high school who's not emotionally ready for all of the things. It doesn't mean that every high school basketball player wasn't ready, but there were a bunch during that era. Like if you go back and remember, like there was a bunch of dudes over those couple of years where, you know, Robert Swift, famously out of Bakersfield, right, who had all kinds of personal issues as he came straight out of high school. Not everybody, most people aren't ready for that. That's normal. That's normal. But he did have a more than respectable NBA career. Right? I mean, it started in 2001. It lasted until 2013. Like, by anyone, there's 450 NBA players in a given season, right, to start the season. So in terms of being a basketball player, to be one of 450, to be the number one overall pick, I don't know, like, it's an incredible accomplishment. So in life, he's not a bust. In life, he's not an underachiever. But in the world of the NBA, to be a number one overall pick in that draft and be drafted ahead of Tyson Chandler, who, again, wasn't great to start, but figured it out and became an incredible team leader and player and part of a championship team with the Dallas Mavericks. Like, yeah, there's no comparison in their careers. So I think there's a respectful way to say something which could be deemed as disrespectful, to say, like, look, dude, you can't, if you want to be in the arena, right? It's the old man in the arena. If you want to be in the arena and being judged with the greatest of all time, to be drafted by the greatest of all time and not live up to reasonable expectations for a number one overall pick, like, then you shouldn't be in sports. On the other hand, there is a respectful way to say all these things. Does that make any sense? And now, look, I'm not gonna say that I'm perfect or that I haven't said things that if I would go back and look at them, I would say, like, you know, I wish I would have done that a little differently. I had a podcast with Brian Butch, and I said that Brian Butch was overrated only because Brian Butch redshirted his first year in college despite being a McDonald's All-American. And I didn't know all the personal stuff he was going through. I didn't know they tried to put weight on him and he ended up gaining 70 pounds instead of getting like 40 pounds. Again, it's all on my podcast. I did 2 parts with Brian Butch. But I also realized that my wording at the time wasn't really appropriate. Wasn't the way in which I should have said. So there's a more interesting way to look at it and a fairer way to describe an 18, 19-year-old kid. Just like there's a more fair way to talk about a 20, 22, 23. Like, he didn't become nearly what people thought he should become. And he probably didn't work hard enough at it. He wasn't ready for all that, become an NBA basketball player, let alone a number one overall pick, to carry that burden. That's the big thing with it. A friend of mine was in the Cleveland's organization when they drafted Anthony Bennett. And they're like, look, if you look at that draft, only Victor Oladipo, and of the top 10 picks, has become an all-star. So there have been plenty of other busts, per se. But when you're the number one pick, there's everybody remembers you. Like, if Greg Oden had gone 6th, not that big a deal. Greg Oden goes first ahead of Kevin Durant. Well, now he becomes a huge, incredible bust, despite the fact that it's really his body that let him down, not necessarily his work ethic. Kwame Brown's work ethic, personal life, personal habits, that has to be what led to him not achieving what his remarkable physical gifts. You know, he's 6'11", 270 pounds coming out of, he was a monster physical specimen. Monster. But he didn't amount to nearly what he should have, despite having a long and respectable NBA career. Like, look, if you play basketball, my only dream was to play one day in the NBA. Like, I want to play a day in the NBA to say I did it. To say I was among the best in the world. Kwame Brown accomplished that. But there's two sides to it. I can say, dude, you need to be a little bit more respectful and have, a little bit smarter way of putting it than some have. On the other hand, like, look, if you don't want to be the number one overall pick, you shouldn't have gone straight out of high school, or say, like, I wasn't ready to be the number one overall pick. I wasn't emotionally ready for those things. In other words, and this happens in most places in athletics, we only want the good stuff. We don't want the bad. And that's not the way it works. We only want the good stuff and not the bad. I had this conversation with my son. My son made a game-winning free throw this weekend. But you go back a couple weeks ago, and he missed 4 free throws that cost us a game. I'm like, look, you can't. And I specifically, we had the lead. I ran a play to get him the ball because I knew they were fouling. That's my belief. I got him the ball and knew they were fouling. And you can't You can't say, I want to be in that arena. I only want to make the game-winning free throws. You're going to miss them. No one has ever made every game-winning free throw. Never happened. I guess, except for Tony Snell, who hasn't missed a free throw in like a year and a half, right? I love the beef. I do think that it's not great form for guys to be calling out dudes that, if you especially used to be a friend. And you can also contextualize it with like, look, it's 10 years ago, the guy was in his 20s and he was a knucklehead. Then we all can go like, yeah,